you have to protect yourself. That means your hearing, that means your education, your focus space. Protect yourself. And put yourself in an environment where you're not going to get distracted. You know what you can do and what you can't do. And it takes strength. The great people we know, they didn't become great by just rolling the dice. They were massive sacrifices.
Will, we say that name in the drumming industry and everyone knows it's you. I just heard the band play Living Color just recently when I saw you out on Long Island. The band sounds better than ever. You guys sound so great. You are playing the best I have ever heard, and I've known you a long time.
That's long before Living Color.
Absolutely. Better and better, Will. Thank you so much for joining us here. This is exciting to have you here to kind of hear your story and to get a little bit more background into Will Calhoun.
Okay.
So tell me, how did music as a kid, where did this enter your life to then plant the seed that you wanted to do this for the rest of your life?
Great question. Two places. One would be my living room. My father was a military naval officer, so he would bring back records from Iran, Tehran, Greece, different parts of Europe. And I had different music from the Caribbean outside of his extensive collection of everything from Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk, Coltrane, Harry Belafonte. He read Fox. We had comedic records, so that the album covers were kind of on the floor like a deck of cards, and I can look at things. I always wanted to go to the Montreux Jazz Festival because I always saw that Montreux Jazz Festival logo on the records.
Yes.
So there was that, which I have to say was amazing. And my favorite magazine as a child, we had the magazine rack was next to the stereo system, was National Geographic. And I would always thumb through the National Geographic and read articles about other cultures and stuff. So there was that side. And then there was the blessing of being from what I call God's country, which is the Bronx, New York, because my backyard faced a gentleman named Raymond Chu. Ray Chu finished high school and became musical director for Ashford and Simpson and Diana Ross when he was like 17 or 18. The great Steve Jordan lived around the corner. And all of our parents were into us being a part of musical environments, schools. There was an Italian guy, Mr. Palumba. Mr. Palumba was the first music school that came up in the Bronx. There wasn't a music school in our community. Mr. Palumba is where Steve Jordan went. My older brother played. This great drummer named Pumpkin, you heard me talk about him, Errol Bedwood, he started hip hop.
Yeah.
So we had this community in the Bronx, honestly, of really great. Leroy Clouden, who was, I think, the most successful and well-known, although Steve became the most popular. Leroy was no joke either.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own things.
What a vibe of talent you had there.
So many great drummers and percussionists in the neighborhood. So the advantage of having the records at home and then seeing Steve Jordan on television on the SNL band when he's a teenager, right? Pumpkin being on hip hop records when I was 13 years old. So it also gave me the actual reality, the actual proof, as the Buddhists say, that I could become a musician because my neighbors were musicians. I saw my friends and I saw the investment our parents put into us and the possibilities of getting on radio, working in NBC Orchestra, or going out touring, cutting records, producing. So it didn't seem like it was impossible to do.
What a blessing to be born in that kind of a like-minded society. It's like a little mini cultural society.
It was insane.
The Bronx. Wow.
And my mom, we had a two-family house, and she opened up the bottom floor to the community. So the other advantage was my brother, very open-minded. He was a prodigy. He played till about age 20, and he just kind of didn't want to play anymore, which is why I started late. I started at 16. Yeah. He played with organ trios, salsa bands, funk bands, rock bands, so all of the gear was in our house. So I can just go in the basement at any moment during the week and hear him play with the trio, organ trio, a salsa band, funk band with horns and key. So I was able to just check out the talent. I didn't want to be a drummer and musician at that time, but the environment was very fertile.
How unbelievable. So you were taking lessons at this?
No. If I told you what I was doing, you would stop this interview. I wanted to be a motocross champion.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was practicing with the motocross instructor. I took lessons. I was a skinny kid. I was 110 pounds. My bike was 175 pounds. So I was on a special diet. I was in the gym. And I had a motocross teacher because I wanted to be the first African-American young motocross champion. I was into bikes, changing transmissions, fixing. That was like my drug. Until my mom came to see one race and she walked up to me and said, "That was really amazing. And I really hope you enjoyed it because that's the last race you're going to do."
Bless mom, man. Good for her.
So I traded the bike in and put the money on the drum kit. Went to Sam Ash, trying to hold back the tears, trying to be, I was 15. I was like, I'm not going to cry. And I took the money down, man, and I put the money on my first drum kit.
How she saved your life. That's fantastic.
Just so you know, during all of that jamming time, I would watch my brother and then put my helmet on and go out with some guys. And we went out to the Whitestone Bridge area and sometimes in Queens and Long Island.
Yeah.
And up a little above Scarsdale. And I was racing.
Unbelievable. So how did music kind of step into the world where you started looking at this more professionally?
Professionally, it kicked in from hanging out with my brother and going to shows, the politics of music, of Motown, and I have a few uncles that were in Vietnam who talked to me about Sly Stone and Jimi Hendrix and what the music meant to them and what the songs meant to them. So I started to marry things. At that time, the Jackson 5 were kind of big, Earth, Wind & Fire, and when I would attend these shows, they were amazing. The Earth, Wind & Fire show was amazing. I mean,
they used to sound like the recording.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
Great musicianship, professionalism, magic, all of these kind of things going on, and and the Jackson 5 and Michael Jackson. I ended up on the same label as Michael Jackson, and even as an adult, being on Sony, I went to see Michael, and I was like, I'm a grown man now. Michael's all right. He's not that. He's okay. And I would get my popcorn in the garden, and he would come on, and I spent the first 40 minutes holding that one kernel because he just blew me away my whole life. So I think the professionalism stepped in from me experiencing my neighbors, like hearing guys come to my house and tell my brother, have Steve Jordan say, I'm going to be working in Saturday Night Live band. What is it like? Oh, there's this. And I was listening all the time. There's a union, and you have to get this, and there's a card, and there's rehearsals, and so-and-so's coming in, this actor. And it was exciting. Let's just cut to the chase. He was dropping names on people that I saw on television and in movies. And Pumpkin, God bless him, he died unfortunately too young. He was selling beats to record labels in 1972. It was very interesting to sit in your friend's car and have him play a track. And then 6 months later, you heard that track on the radio with Run DMC or with Marvin Gaye or somebody was using the track.
Yeah, way ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time. And you can pick any Rachmaninoff or Beethoven or Brahms tune and tell him the key and to play it, and he would play it. So he wasn't just a hip hop and R&B guy. He was a well-rounded musician. So these are the kind of neighbors that I had. So I can go to Pumpkin's house. I can go to, to Raymond Choose, everybody's parents. One of the most prolific guys with information was Nile Rodgers' stepfather, lived a few blocks away, and he had all these photographs of Steve Gadd when he first came to New York, Ralph McDonald, Richie T, all these amazing photos. He had all these Polaroids. I don't know where. I asked Nile when I see him, where is your stepdad's? They should be in the museum. And I would go to the house and they would talk about music, and for hours I would just, I was like, that's Steve Gadd. It's wow. So this environment really was the impetus for me then wanting to study. And that's when I cracked open a magazine, Modern Drummer, heard about Drummers Collective, called the school. I was 16, went down, signed up for Horace Arnold's Jazz Lab, and we met. And to this day, it's like a father-son relationship. We're still great friends. He introduced me to Max, Elvin, Charlie Persip, so many guys he introduced me to from his generation that talked to me about making the cymbals sing, time, and, Roy Haynes, all of these things about how to play with brushes, how to make music on the kit. Don't just be able to play time. You have to be able to listen to Papa Joe, listen to Philly Joe, listen to Buddy Rich, listen to these cats that are doing other kinds of things on the kit. Don't just listen to rock and roll or hip hop or commercial music. Jazz musicians, they will always tell me, are artists first. They're artists first. They don't do it to become artists. Horace's door opened, and the Zildjian family, that's how I met Armand, Lenny DiMuzio, all of that stuff came through Horace, man.
Well, it's amazing when you mention these names. You mentioned Max and Elvin. This is Max Roach and Elvin Jones. A lot of the young generation might not know who these people are. And these are names that, as you mentioned them, I always ask the listeners to do the research.
Yes, please.
Go to the drummer world and type in Max Roach.
Do.
And because these guys played in such a way, the fact that you had been around them and learned from them and had been influenced by them, and plus you have probably one of the largest scopes of knowledge of cultural playing for percussion. I mean, even going back to Aborigine in Australia, you know, you live there for a while till you can learn. I mean, you really have done massive, serious studying and homework and research. And again, when I just heard you play recently, you can hear all that in your playing. You pull from these experiences. And even in jazz, it's not just, you understand bebop, you understand swing, you understand big band, you understand all the different idiosyncrasies of jazz. I mean, you're one of the few guys that really, still to this day, is deep into studying it. That's huge.
Oh, thank you. And it's important.
It's huge.
It's important. Max told me the instrument always wins. So he told me to keep studying. You'll never defeat the instrument, but he said you're going to have a lot of fun trying. So he's also influential into me. Randy Wesson, who just passed.
Yeah.
Folks should look Randy up, jazz pianist.
Yeah.
Not only drummers, you know, a lot of people really pushed me to study. It's an important part of education. And it's not just learning how to play something, but it's learning how to play music in a sense, and your technique and your rhythmic analysis and all of those things all come into play. So I was thirsty for it, as I was when I was 5 years old, flipping through the National Geographic magazines. Once I was able to tour and go on the road and enjoy the success of Living Color, but being able to stay in Australia and arrange that Aboriginal trip was huge for me, because I looked at it as a rare opportunity to tap into something that's only going to help me to become a better musician. And you know, if I had to give you an end result of all of that experience, I would have to tell you that you know, after a while, I just don't believe in styles of music, so to speak. I listen to music, I understand what the styles mean. It's like, you know, it's like saying tomato sauce. Tomato sauce can go on pasta, it can go on your hamburger. It can go on your rice. It's tomato sauce. How you use it is how you use it. And after a while, I just thought I wanted to sort of not get into the rock and the jazz and the, you know, and I had experiences where I would play some different beats with jazz and older blues cats, and they would go, "What's that, man?" And I would say, "Oh, that's a," they would say, "Man, never play that on my stage. Don't bring that stuff from over there, over here, it doesn't belong." And I'll say, "I'm sorry, sir." And then the gig, I play, and I would play the same thing on the gig, and he would go, "Man, when I was soloing, that was so hip, man. What was that?" I said, "Oh, that's an old Irish snare thing." He goes, yeah, use that. It's the same thing I did at Soundcheck, but it wasn't Irish then. So if I say drum and bass or something electric or hip, those cats are like, "No, don't bring that on my stage. We don't play that music here."
So this is the school of hard knocks.
This is the school of hard knocks, and that's when you learn to be quiet and just give the music what it needs. And you can study and learn those things. It's very important to do that. But how you deliver is very important and unique. And you talked about how you talk to Vinny and Steve and Harvey Mason and these guys deliver, I think, in a very fresh and honest way.
Absolutely. So you went from Drummers Collective, and then you kind of went to Berkeley. How did that transition happen?
I didn't want to go to college, and I come from a very academic family. My mom has 2 master's degrees and a PhD. So saying you don't want to go to school is you know, basically I told her, "I'm going to be one of the cats. I'm just going to hang out in New York and be one of the cats." She said, "You going to be one of the cats?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Okay, then I'll put your luggage and a saucer of milk on the porch. You can be one of the cats." That was the end of that conversation. So I had to choose a school.
What a wise woman.
And they wanted me to go to NYU, and Professor Abdul Malik was there. He's a great bass player who played with Thelonious Monk. I got into NYU, but I wanted to go to Berkeley, so I had an interview with them, and God bless him, he's not here anymore. Abdul Malik told my parents, "I think this is not really his scene." So I went up to Berkeley, and it was confusing because I was happy to get in, and then Ralph McDonald told me.
Great percussionist.
Ralph lived in Mount Vernon. I'm in the Bronx. He was close by. Another guy who was, and Ralph was like, "Don't go to school. It's going to ruin your ideas, man." Don't, you know, everybody had a you know, opinion about, which a respectful one. And I thought this was a good experience for me to find my own identity. You know, I was here, and hip hop was kind of starting in the Bronx. I was scared to leave. My friends were getting deals. You know, my colleagues like Sterling Campbell and Zach Alpert started playing with Bowie and Duran Duran, and there I am in college watching Johnny Carson. I'm like, "That's my man on TV. What am I doing eating this cold Chinese rice? You know, what am I doing in Boston?" So there's that element, but I have to say it was good for me academically to go and focus and be away from New York, but I can still get back where I needed to. But in Berkeley, I really was able to find the Will Calhoun identity. Because in college, you have guys who want to play just like Steve Gadd or Tony Williams or this guy or that guy. And you're looking around, you're hearing tremendous talent. But what are you going to do?
Yeah. Where is your voice?
What are you going to say? No, Steve Gadd is not going anywhere. So what are you going to fill in for Steve Gadd? I don't think so. No disrespect to the guys, but it forced me to realize what's my voice. How do I want to sound? What can I borrow from Steve and Tony and Vinny and Terry Bozzio? And what can I get from these guys to make my painting? What kind of colors can I get from these guys to make my own painting? And Berkeley was a good environment for kind of almost, undercover, going to these practice rooms and things. And because I had nothing to say at that point. I wasn't trying to say anything. I wasn't trying to perform. But it was a great lab. And then I took recording and engineering as my major.
Oh, interesting.
So I wanted to learn about how to get a good drum sound, microphones, tuning, how things translate through those cables and get back to the console, how much of it, and then you start to learn why the Led Zeppelin records sound so great, and why Miles's recordings sound so great, and the ECM recordings and the Motown recordings. So I was getting into the academic sound side, and Berkeley gave me the opportunity to practice the drums, play, study. The great Alan Dawson, I never had a chance to. The waiting list was too long, by the way. 4 years I was up there, I never got in.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's Alan Dawson in that school, and then there was me being able to start to learn about microphones and how they work and recording techniques.
Alan was another amazing talent that we don't hear much of his name, which we need to do something to get more of that. John Ramsey, a wonderful student of Alan, has kept his books going the way it is. So now, where did Living Color come in? Because was that around that time where you started to meet the guys?
Interesting story. One of the trips back home, I went to see a band called Bush Rock in New York, which was the band that was kind of scaring New York. Kenwood Denard on drums, Rayo Wesley Grant on bass, and Delmar Brown on keyboards. And the 55 Grand Club was the venue. And that's where you saw Jocko and Mike Stern, all these guys were playing. That was a new hip kind of club.
Yeah.
I drove down and I wanted to see this band because I was a student of Kenwood's and I know anything he was going to do was going to be incredible. And I saw a band that changed my life, literally changed my life, just watching this trio. It was 30 years ahead of its time. Yeah. Everybody was at the club, but nobody wanted to be seen. I saw Omar, I saw George Benson, I saw everybody was in the back having a drink. The front part of the club was empty. Oh. So I sat in the front with my Sony recorder and put it on the table and bootlegged the gig, which I gave them a copy of. But Jocko Pistorius was there, and I played with Jocko on one gig where he didn't play bass, unfortunately, he played piano. It was a trio, and he hired me and a bass player. He was writing music for his new record. And Jocko was a great guy. He's one of those kind of guys. You could stop him in the street and say, man, I don't know how to play this tune. And he would take his bass out and, he was, I thought, a lovely person. Yeah. And he introduced me to Vernon, and he said, you two guys should know each other. So for years, I thought Vernon was a bass player. Went back to Berkeley, graduated, came home, ran into Vernon again, and he started the Black Rock Coalition. He had a radio show. I had my band in school called Dark Sarcasm. And Vernon liked my band's music, and we swapped tapes. And he played my stuff on the radio, and we talked about politics and music. And then one day, his drummer split to do a major tour, and he asked me to join the band.
Simple as that.
Simple as that. That's kind of how we.
And who else was in the band at that time?
At that time, there were 3 versions of Living Color before this version. There was an instrumental Weather Reporters kind of version. There was a punk version. But the version we all know it was still forming. Yeah. So when I got to rehearsal, Corey, the lead singer, Corey Glover, had just returned from shooting Platoon. And he's the movie Platoon. And my joke when I met him was, oh, you're the only black guy that survived the movie to the end. That's my joke. When do you guys die or whatever, you fall into a hole or something. You were with Charlie Sheen, man, in the firing hole, man. How much they pay you for that? So that was my joke when I first met him. But he was in a weird mood. He just come back from the Philippines. It was, he was explaining like there were things on the set where they didn't tell him where explosives were. So sometimes things would blow up and to really scare them. So he was still a little, but then I heard the guy sing and I was like, wow, this guy's incredible. So he just got back and a little edgy. We met, Vernon had a loft and we started sort of to practice, and then the bass player was suggested to Vernon, who was Muzz. And that was the beginning. And Don, we took the band like a job. We went to rehearsal 4 or 5 days a week from 10 o'clock to 7, 8 o'clock. Wrote songs all day, rehearsed all day, practiced, took a lunch break. It was like going to work. And that's what we did. So around the time, Jagger saw us and the whole thing with the CBGBs, and when it came time to record the record, I mean, I don't know, the rhythm tracks were cut in a day or 2 days because the band was just razor sharp.
Wow.
We'd done so much rehearsing and so many gigs, college gigs and this kind of thing. But our goal was to remain true to ourselves, play cover songs if we wanted to play cover songs.
Yeah.
We didn't want it to be a cover band. We wanted to write our own music and tell our own story. And we knew that we looked different and we sounded different, but so did Hendrix at one time, so did Miles, so did Charlie Parker, so did Muhammad Ali. You can go down the list.
Oh, but
you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you opened up a whole nother world of opportunity that was so exciting and still exciting at that point. So
thank you.
You're writing together, you're doing this together. What I love about it is the fact that you said you really took this like a business.
Oh, totally.
This is a very important ingredient that I think a lot of the younger generation don't really see, the fact that this has to be for lack of better terms, a 9 to 5, nose to the grindstone kind of a mentality.
You sleep it, man, you eat it, you breathe it, it doesn't stop. It's not you don't shut it off. All you do when you're not playing is you're thinking about music, or you're writing a song, or Personally, Dom, I got drum machines in my kitchen. I piss everybody off in the house. I got drum machines in the bathroom. A beat can come to me when I'm in the bathroom. Now we have iPhones, you can sing stuff into the phone.
Yeah.
If you do that in the shower, your phone's not gonna work. So I keep machines and little recorders and stuff all over the house, because a bird can give me an idea, a television commercial can give me an idea. Yeah. I can drop the bloody spoon in the sink and it can do a cool ratamacule that can give me an idea. Who knows? But when a spark hits, you want to be ready to get that idea out, because as you know as well, being an accomplished, when the idea goes away and you didn't get it, you feel like somebody stole your wallet.
Lost something. Yeah,
it's like, I got pickpocketed on that one, So I keep stuff around. I keep the stuff around, and sometimes just to noodle, so it doesn't shut off. I think it's very important that you feel that way about your art. It's life. You don't shut off as a human being, right? You leave school, you go home, you go with your parents, you go with your lady, you go whatever you're doing, you go bowling, you hang out, you have drinks with your friends. All of those things are aspects of living. As an artist, I like to keep all of those things that are an aspect of being an artist always on the level. I went into a 12th century Casbah in Morocco. My friend owned this incredible, it turned into a hotel, Casbah Agafe. And his wife and him brought it, did the research, and they fixed it up just like it was in the 12th century. It's Arabic on the walls, incredible carpet. The ceiling is 8 feet of braided wood. Oh. It's insane. It's just, some of the rooms are in there are insane. So I asked his wife, what was the vibe when you come into a place like this? She said, all senses have to be zeroed to get the experience. So you have to see beautiful people with your eyes, you gotta smell good food, got to hear great music, whatever you touch, the material, everything has to be on a high level. Then the experience comes to you in a larger fashion. That's what the concept was of the Casbah in those days. And when she said that to me, it made me think about, that's the way I want to receive my art, zero balanced. So I can judge whatever I want to take in. I can take my ideas and take 30% or 50% or 80% and not be uneven, and then you only get some of it. So with young artists, my suggestion would be is to try to zero out as much as possible, because the more you zero out, the more you're going to get in. And if you cannot have things, as the blues cats say, get out of the way of your music. You're playing and you're blocking at the same time. Can't you hear that? Get out of the way, man. Just play the passage. Don't go back and check it. You said it already.
But that's profound. That's just such profound philosophy for not only art but life. Zero out. And when she told me, I was sitting there, she was talking to me, and I was just thinking about, when she said that, I was thinking about music. Like, wow, sometimes you go into a venue. I had a student, heavy metal kid, piercings, long earrings, and he whispered in it, I want to play brushes, play jazz. Like, what are you whispering for? He said, well, the guys that I play with, they're not into jazz. And I said, well, when you go back to these guys 3 months later, after a couple of things I show you, he was already a killer young talent. Double bass and the whole. And I showed him a couple of things, and he put that into his metal playing. It was a good night.
And I told him, don't think about it as jazz. It's music.
Yeah.
You want to throw those passages in there? You don't got to tell anybody you study with me or you. It's not important. Make the music sound as best as possible from your drum chair, and the rest will come to you.
You have always been open-minded, as long as I've known you for 30 plus years. Always open-minded. So that you think that came from the Bronx and your family? Where did that come from?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That desire to always want to be open.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't allowed to be closed in my family.
Interesting.
I couldn't be, I mean, what can I tell you, man? I hung out in South Bronx with, my Latin friends. I hung out by Allerton Avenue with all my Italian friends. Yeah. I went to Jewish summer camps. I mean, it was all there. I went to different people's houses for dinner. So my parents strongly believed in diversity. Strongly in diversity. We weren't allowed to talk about people or cultures in any kind of negative way. If you saw something that was an incident, you don't stick that on a whole situation.
Interesting.
It's an incident. Grandparents and parents, they've seen more than you have, obviously. Yeah. They don't want to see you go down the wrong road. So I wasn't allowed to, Dom, to be honest with you, unless I was out of the house. But around my community, it was unacceptable to have those, even though some of those things were inflicted on us outside of our community, we were still not allowed to behave in that way. As difficult as it can be, Dom, sometimes to be open, I think it's just, for my existence, it's just the right way for me to be. Yeah. Otherwise, I think I'll get distracted.
Oh, you've always been straight to the core of focused on your art. And what's amazing too is you have a great balance of the discipline of business that it takes to maintain all this. How to get back to people, how to be on time. Where'd you learn all that?
Well, good question. A few places. I mean, at home, obviously, at first, having a military dad, lateness is way past hitting a foul ball, And time is like on the drum set, man. It's not a joke. It is money. You miss a beat, you miss a bar, you throw off an orchestra or a 5-piece band or a 10-piece band. Yeah. And I really look at everything kind of in the same light. But I think I always just wanted to nail things, the youngest of 3, and I had to watch my older brother and sister do things. But I like to be early to be ready. Yeah. I'll come to the interview early, things happen, and it just takes heat off of the scenario. So it's a combination of life, and it's a combination of, honestly, Dom, getting a record deal, signing with Sony at 23 years old, looking at those 500-page contracts, realizing the reality of what those contracts mean, what's yours, what's not yours, what you think is yours. And you just start asking yourself simple questions. They would send cars to our house all the time. You're going to go to the Grammys. You're going to go here. We're going to send you a car. I'd always say, who's paying for the car? Oh, you guys are? I'll take it. And then, we're going to do the International Rock Awards. We're going to send a car to us. Who's paying for the car? Oh, you guys are paying for the car. I'm like, I'm cool. I let my man Smitty drive me down there today.
But how
I'd rather give him the $20.
Exactly right.
But I mean, you have to, as young folks watching this, you have to ask questions. You never assume. You can go read all. Will Smith went completely broke. Yeah. I mean, he told me he made a bunch of dough, and the record was huge, and the second album came out, and he said, I think I sold 5 copies, and my mom brought 2 of them. So anything can happen. It could be, up and down.
Absolutely.
So you want to prepare for, it's not like you're insecure about anything, but business-wise, you want to be on time. And on time, to me, is early, because anything can happen. The gig can change. As the drummer, we drive the bus, man.
Yeah.
We drive the bus. Yeah. And most recently, my biggest time experience was I got called, thanks to Willie, to do the NBC Orchestra thing for the Grammys Legend show. Nice. I never did a television show, and I never knew how stressful it was. You have the in-ears, and you hear people saying, we're going to go to a commercial. No, we're not. We're going to do Sly Stone. No, we're going to do Cyndi Lauper. And you have all the charts. And the guys who do it all the time are like, Will, take off your headphones. Those guys, they're going to drive you crazy. They'll let you know 30 seconds before. I'm like, I can't afford the 30 seconds before. So I was always trying to be, you know what I mean, and staying up at night and getting emails 3 o'clock in the morning. We're dropping the second part of phase 1 of the show that we're going to do. And I learned my lesson. It was great. But in the future, I would probably not go home, get a hotel as close to the venue as possible. Right. I was at the Beacon, and really just because it was, you can get a warning, Dom, but what's your personality like? Yeah, yeah. You might be an early riser, I might be a late riser. Yeah. So when you got the information, you know how to do the math on the information. That was a great, and I was there always 2-3 hours before the production guys. just because I would hear, I didn't want to walk in on a session and say, oh, the first 12 pages we're going to take out and do just page 3 and page 9, but an hour later. I don't do that for a living, so I wanted to be there on time. And that's the thing I like to let young folks know, prepare for the changes, because you can make them very smooth if you're there early. I produced a great musician by the great Herb Alpert, and I'll tell the story because it's real. Harlem School of the Arts was getting ready to close its doors. It was running out of funding. Herb, I don't know, apparently he gave the school a very large donation. So I got a call from some of the teachers, and they said, your friend came by here, and they were joking with me, Herb. So I personally called Herb to thank him, because I said, I got a lot of colleagues in that school. So I just said, Herb, what inspired you to, you don't mind me asking, to make a huge donation? He said, well, I got there early for my interview, and I saw a little girl taking her violin out of a case. And she put her music on the ground, and she started practicing, and he walked up to her, and he said, oh, how are you doing? And the girl said, oh, I'm fine. He says, what are you getting ready to do? She said, oh, I have a violin class. What time is your violin class? She said, 12 noon. And it was 10:30, and she was practicing. He said, that was enough for me to write that check.
Beautiful, beautiful.
There's a lot in that story you can take from that story. But he was just moved by her passion to come early to practice, to be prepared for her lesson. Like, that's all it was for him. He told me it wasn't the faculty, it wasn't the symphony room. it was that little girl. Yeah. And I tell young people that story because of the importance of being prepared for things, because the technology changed the game. Yeah. I think it makes people lazier, less communicative.
Interesting, yeah. Very true.
Less tangible. And it's like, oh, I got it. Oh, I'm going to check online. I'm going to check, I still got to go to the store, man. Yeah. I want to buy shoes. I want to buy socks. I want to buy a scarf. I want to buy music. I want to buy a book. I know the Amazons are out there. I want to go in the store. I want to check it out. Maybe somebody can refer something else to me. Right. That's a different experience that we've experienced that young folks don't really know about too. Right. So it's important. Technology is brilliant. I love it. I use it. But
but in moderation. Yeah.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. I always ask in closing, we've got these students that are watching this, and hopefully that they're learning from it and hearing what you're saying, and the profound wisdom that you're sharing, because this is so, being early is being on time.
Yes.
And so what else would you share with them? Think about this young generation, listening to what you're saying now, and you have an opportunity to kind of give them some guidance that could help them achieve their dreams and or their passion with music. What would you say to them?
That's a tough one, because there's so many variations on that. You have to protect yourself. That means your hearing, that means your education, your focus space. Protect yourself. And put yourself in an environment where you're not going to get distracted. You know what you can do and what you can't do. Right. It takes strength. The great people we know, they didn't become great by just rolling the dice. They were massive sacrifices. So you got to protect yourself, number one. Number two, education is huge. And the advantage this younger generation has is they have YouTube. They have things. You and I couldn't dial up Art Blakey and watch him play and look at his technique. I wouldn't have went to school. Yeah. I would have stayed home all day. We got stuff off a cassette, we transcribed. But when I do my research, Dom, I'm researching rhythms that are 40,000 years old, and I'm also going to Northern California to talk to Roger Lynn about the new drum machine he's going to come out with, because it's important that the direction goes in both ways, meaning the educational side. So young folks, you gotta do your homework. You gotta get the history. You can't start the football game at the 50-yard line. How did you get to the 50-yard line? What plays did you do? Where did you fumble the ball? What did you do right? You have to know that. Then you'll know how to get the next 50 yards and score a touchdown. That's the idea with the educational piece. You have to really do the research in the back. And you have the technology, but you gotta also academically get your hands wet. There's no nice way to do research. There's no nice, cool, calm, it's not eating ice cream in the park.
It's dirty all the time.
It's dirty. And people are gonna say you can't and no and this, and you have to dig and dig and dig to get it. And the diamond's there. It's there, it's there. But it's And the diamond's there for you to get. It's not for somebody to get to give you.
Right.
That's not your diamond.
Right.
You have to go get your own. You got to dig. You have to go do the research. Lastly, I would say what you talked about earlier is the open-mindedness. You know, in this age of being able to make decisions and Snapchat and talk about people and do things, be open-minded.
Yeah.
And remember, you know, we're the real energy forces, not the machines. Bounce stuff off of people.
Right.
If you're pissed off, you're not confused about, posting it's not going to help you. That's just opening up your window for somebody to look inside of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't help you.
Yeah.
You got to bounce stuff off of people. Cobham had the camp. He told me about it. You guys,
Yeah,
because he called me and he said, what does a drummer say when he gets on stage with a bass player for the first time?
Yeah.
We have a code when you and I go out and sit in. What are we doing? What key is it in? How you want to start it out?
Yeah,
4 bars. Take 4 out, Dom. Okay, boom. Hey, B flat. We have codes over there. We can talk about a set in 5 minutes.
It's a whole language, yeah.
It's a language.
Yeah.
You should learn that. You can't get that on Snapchat. So you got to bounce the information off of cats so you can learn that aspect. I'm totally into technology, as you know. I'm an electronic drum gadget head. I'm a nerd when it comes to that.
And performing on stage, hearing you do it, it was so exciting, from acoustic to electronic, back into acoustic, back to electronic, in and out with the pedals going. It was incredible.
Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you. But that's the idea. You have to look at it that way. For the young folks, it's not so important in the beginning to choose a lane. Save that time. You don't got to choose a lane now.
Yeah.
It's not the time. Now you got to cross all the bloody lanes, you know, without the blinker on. You got to piss everybody off. You got to play all night. You got to let the neighbors call the cops. Now's the time for that. Get that information, then choose your lane if you feel even it's necessary. I still haven't done it. I still like too many things in life, too many places I want to be and play. Cats, I haven't. My decision is not to choose one. But some people may want to choose one. But while you're young and you're studying, you gotta drive down a one-way street. You gotta double park. You gotta hit the hydrant, let the water come. You gotta do all of those things to understand what it means to do it properly.
Yeah.
And you're gonna borrow from those mistakes.
Yeah.
And you're gonna keep making them. I'm proud. I got tons I'm gonna make, Dom, when I walk out of here. I'm loud and wrong, man. That was me. I did it. Did you need my ID for that?
Loud and wrong. Well, you are, not only are you cutting through the lanes, you've hopped the divider and you are facing oncoming traffic. And that's how you've always been consistently. Well, I thank you so much.
Thank you, Dom. It's a pleasure. And congrats with this project, man. It's very important.
Thank you so much.
People
Thank you
to see
so,
what you're
so
doing.
much.
So thanks to you, thanks to Jules, and see you next time, man.
Thanks so much. Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
You're
Fantastic.
welcome.